Susan Harmon.
Here.
Harry Meyer.
Here.
Mickey Schneider.
Here.
Terry McClung. Here. Melissa Green.
Here.
We have 6.
All right, we can have pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everybody to our city council meeting for Monday, September 14th. If I get an approval of the agenda, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I would like to, if it's all right with the city council, to move item number 3 up to item 1 under new business, the approval of the mid-year budget, so Mr. Clark can not have to stay for all the meetings. And also like to add for under new business, item number 4, an amendment to the sign ordinance regarding political signs. Does anybody else have anything? If not, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, get a motion to approve the minutes for August 24th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, under Parks, position number 3, we have an application from Kevin Rule. Get a motion, Ms. Green?
I move that we accept the application for Kevin Rule for position 3 on the Parks Commission.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Are we still deferring the application for Randy Maddox?
Has the legalities been wrapped up?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Did the legalities get wrapped up?
I have no idea.
Randy, could you come and let us know? Come up to the mic.
Is he up here?
Yep, that's right there.
And your question, please?
We just need to know, have all legalities been settled yet?
No, not yet.
Okay,
We're
thank
still-
you. No, it's going to have to stay deferred.
Move to do so.
I move to defer until all legalities get settled.
I'll second that.
All right, I've got a motion to defer it until legalities are settled. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir?
I would say that we give it until the next meeting, and that'll be long enough.
And then what?
Well, I don't care about the legalities. I think that we need to be able to make our decision with or without the legalities. I don't think that that's necessarily our concern. That's a matter between neighbors, and that's not us.
All right,
Can we have
Ms.
discussion
Green?
on this?
We have a second.
Ms. Green,
Yeah.
Um,
No, I don't.
you had a comment?
No, not right now.
Yeah, I'm asking, is this something we can discuss? We've never been in this.
We're discussing, that's what Mr. McClung was doing.
Okay.
There was a motion to second, and then,
Okay. Because the legalities would be related to the commission, that's why I'm saying defer until everything is settled. If you'd rather just end now and say, at a later point, come back, that would be fine. But we just can't,
actually, the HDC has nothing to do with the legal issue going on. It's a land use issue.
Yes and no, but we can't have, it's not appropriate that the city put into a city position someone who is tied up in neighborly problems, shall we say. This just, it would look terrible. So we can either defer, or end, but I don't see any other way around this.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I
Mr. McCollum?
believe that's Councilman Snyder's personal opinion, and, which is fine, which he's certainly entitled to that, but that's all that is. And so we can make the vote accordingly.
Ms. Harmon?
Yeah, and I would kind of like to put a date on it too, because, I mean, I don't know all the details. I'm not sure why necessarily I would need to know all of them, but there's always two sides of the story, and right now, all I'm hearing is that there's issues, but, I mean, in order to actually vote on something, I mean, if it's that concerning, I think it should be explained, not both sides, because I don't think it's fair to the applicant to not be able to represent himself other than to say there are some issues. So,
Is it possible that we could have both parties come before us, or
I
in a
mean-
This
workshop?
is a private issue.
Yeah.
This is between two property owners. The council has nothing to do with this, has nothing to say with it, has no impact on the decision.
We're not a
True,
court.
but council
Ms.
is the
Grant?
one that would be seating someone who's having problems with their neighbor.
Why don't we just defer it to the next meeting, and that will give the rest of the council who has Randy's number a chance to visit with Randy. And that way, we will settle it at that time.
That works for me.
That is the motion.
Mr. City Attorney, is there some any liability issues here that we're looking at?
I don't know the full details of what Councilman Schneider is alluding to, but if this is, in the other councilman's opinion, not related to placing him in a position that he make a favorable ruling to his own cause, then there is no real point in deferring. We're not in jeopardy as long as we're not going to be showing favoritism to one side or the other by the act of either appointing or not appointing him. And from what I understood the mayor to say a moment ago, this is a land use issue which HDC doesn't have any authority over, so we're not appointing him to a position which would give him any ability to act improperly.
All right. Ms. Harmon?
I'll make a motion to defer until the next.
There's already been a motion.
Oh, so, okay, sorry.
All right, any further discussion on the motion?
I'd like to amend the motion
Okay,
to be deferred to the next meeting.
Period.
I'll second that,
I thought that was the motion.
No.
Yeah.
No, what was the
I
motion?
said defer, period.
yeah.
Deferred period, okay, deferred to the next meeting, all right. Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah. It just seems to me that the city attorney has just told us that whatever's going on between the neighbors has nothing to do with his appointment to the HDC. So if council people are picking up something that's totally unrelated and using it as a decision maker, I mean, my goodness, you could pick up stuff on anything that comes before council and use it as a decision maker, and it's totally unrelated to the issue. The attorney has spoken, and that's pretty much, I think, what we need to do is take his advice.
Anybody else? All right, we got a motion, I guess we got a motion on the amendment to defer this until the next meeting, and then at that time take a vote. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I would think that would take care of the first motion too, to defer it.
Oh, well then I'm sorry. I was just voting to say that if it gets deferred, I want it to end in 2 weeks. But,
That was the amendment.
yeah, right. So now we're going to vote on the motion to defer?
No, I said, I think this motion to amend it takes care of that motion because we deferred it to the next meeting. So I think we're in good shape.
Mr. Weaver, do you agree with that?
Well, what I think Councilman Thomas is saying is that he voted believing that he was voting only whether to add the amendment to the original motion.
Okay.
Not whether the motion was to pass or not. He would now like the opportunity to vote whether that passes
Okay.
even for that 1 month.
All right, well, okay, we'll go ahead and vote on this thing. Is
Or
there?
what, 2 weeks, I'm sorry.
Right, there's a motion to defer it now. Any further discussion? That's the original motion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No?
All right, so moved. All right, now we do have a vote on HDC for Randy Maddox for position 1.
That was Randy.
I mean,
Well, that's what we just
I'm
did.
sorry. Okay, we've already voted. I'm right here on Kevin Ritchie. Sorry, Randy. They're trying to get you snuck in here again. All right, that brings us up to our public comments.
Good evening. Mayor and Council, I am Laura Jo Smoley, and I live at 17 Pivot Rock Road. On April 22nd, the Independent had a long report on our building official, who many people perceive as being part of the police department because he wears an ESPD shirt and drives an ESPD car, that there were issues with him regarding certain city policies. And then on September the 10th, just recently, the Lovely County Citizen reported on another police department employee who was being accountable for some extremely recent actions and being decertified. I do think that there's 2 questions to this. One is nepotism is not addressed in the city employee handbook. And personally, I feel that hiring a child to work directly under a parent is 99% a poor decision. And I think that there should be a policy drafted and adopted regarding cases of nepotism in city employment. I'm not going to get into the details of the decertification, but it does lead to a question, and that is, can the citizens of Eureka Springs trust the judgment of a police chief who overlooks these kinds of infractions? And I suggest that a special meeting be called to address this issue as soon as possible and demand responsible action in this matter. Please do your due diligence and research and evaluate. I'd also like to point out that Mr. Young may still face the results of the county investigation and other investigations. And I query to the mayor in particular, who you swore to protect the citizens, as did all of the members of council. Who are you willing to protect, the citizens or the police chief? And do code enforcement employees, do they have a trump card that allows them to be exempt from the standards that all city employees follow? Thank you.
All right, that concludes our public comments. That brings us up to our new business. First order of business will be the approval for the mid-year budget adjustments. Get a motion to discuss?
Motion to discuss?
Second.
All right. Mr. Clark is here if we got any questions or comments. Hearing none, can I get a motion then to approve the mid-year budget adjustment? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I'm moved to assign the resolution a number and read it for passage.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider? Yes. Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
We have 6. The resolution number will be 785. A resolution amending the adopted 2020 budget for the city of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, as a result of the mid-year budget review process. Whereas, in the opinion of the City Council, the 2020 fiscal budget should be amended to reflect the following changes in both revenue and expenditure budgetary amounts as set forth hereafter. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Section 1. This resolution shall be known as the 2020 Mid-Year Budget Resolution for the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, for the 12-month period beginning January 1, 2020, and ending December 31, 2020. And the attached documents present revisions to estimates for revenues and expenditures for the period. All revenues and appropriations are based on estimated revenues, and all estimates are subject to change during the budgetary period. Section 2. The amounts for revenues and expenditures proposed in this 2020 mid-year amended budget are hereby authorized and appropriated for the purposes set forth the calendar year ending December 31, 2020. 2020 budget amendments are attached.
All right, thank you. That brings us up to our next item of business is a new resolution to accept a grant for bucket trucks. Get a motion to discuss.
What are we doing about 2?
Beg your pardon?
What are we doing about number 2?
Item number 2?
Yeah, we moved 3 up to first, Ann.
Is it being postponed?
No, we just moved
No,
the order
we're just
around.
doing item number 1 now. We moved item number 3 up to above number 1.
Thank you. Okay.
Get a motion to discuss the resolution for the,
So moved.
Second.
all right. This is, last time we had a resolution to accept the grant, and by the time we went in and we discovered that the cost would exceed the amount that we had allocated in the budget, I think by $10,000. So this is the reason we came back and given this new resolution. When the Director of Public Works went in to find out and get the cost, they discovered that the state had given him the wrong numbers and that this total numbers for this truck was $107,019 instead of, I believe it was $97,000 last time. So that's the reason for the new resolution. So, any discussion or comments, Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, is the additional money still available in the street
Yes.
carryover fund?
Yes, sir. Any further comments? And get a motion to assign a number and read for approval?
I make a motion to assign a number, read for approval.
Second.
Actually, Your Honor, or Mayor, this is a ordinance at this point.
Ordinance or resolution?
Should be an ordinance.
It says resolution.
It came to me as a resolution.
Should have came back to you as an ordinance.
Well, the last one was an ordinance, or resolution.
The last one was approving the accepting of the grant. This one actually waived the purchase through the procurement of the state.
This accepts the grant.
Yeah.
It just has a different figure on it.
We have a different document, I think. Let me look.
The only difference is the amount of money.
Right, it's the same as the other one, only amount of money.
This won't waive the requirement for competitive bidding.
We're still going through the community facility, no, the state to purchase the grant,
Yes.
and they do the bidding.
Well, the new ordinance gives the purchase price and gives the purchase seller, which I don't think this does.
I have not seen any of that information.
It would have come to you about 11 o'clock this morning.
So the last one, the last resolution we had wasn't valid either?
Oh, it was valid for the purpose that it said. The purpose it said was it was to accept the grant.
This is also to accept the grant from, this is a
Well,
resolution
my
authorizing and accepting the grant.
Well, then we will have another additional document after this one for the purchase to be approved.
So are you saying that this would just be for applying for the grant? And the second stage would be accepting?
My understanding is the grant has been awarded. If the award is not, now it has to be spent. The original one was how it would be spent,
No, this is, we had,
allowing you to apply as mayor.
this is if awarded, the same
Uh,
thing.
That one is, I don't know where that one came from. Is that what you got from me a week ago, approximately? Ann,
This is awkward, Tim.
I understand. Did you get this about a week ago? I made a new one today, and I apologize if you didn't get it. But it should have came to you about 11 o'clock today.
I don't recall having seen an ordinance anytime today.
This is a resolution authorizing us to apply for, if awarded, a grant from the USDA Rural Development.
Which is probably one step back from where we're really at.
This is what we should have, what we would have had last week, but the numbers were incorrect. This is correct with the correct numbers.
Yes, I think that's what you're dealing with, yes.
So this is still valid.
It's still valid, yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Oh, I was going to say, is it the last sentence that makes this a problem? If we eliminated administering the grant and did that separately with an ordinance, is that the problem? That he's,
And the second whereas.
I would eliminate that last sentence, yes.
okay.
And the second whereas potentially also.
Okay, so the second whereas comes out, and the last sentence, the mayor's further authorized, comes out? Got it.
And then you're saying we need an ordinance
There is an ordinance that needs to be passed
for us to,
to actually
Tonight or
spend the
next
money.
meeting?
We don't have the ordinance, dear.
okay.
We don't have it.
I know.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
when do they have to have this in?
They need this resolution, so knowing that we can accept the grant, I think we can do the spending the money later on. I'm
Okay.
sure that's fine.
So,
We may need to do an emergency clause on it, but
can
It
we
has
just,
one attached to it, wherever it's floating around at.
so,
so we're still good to go with this.
Yes,
what I understand then is the clerk is going to read, when the motion is made, that it would be read as the resolution
yeah.
with those exemptions.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure, thank you. I make a motion that we assign this resolution a number and read it for passage.
Harry and Melissa did.
I think we already did that.
We did? I thought we just had the motion to discuss.
Well, this has been amended, though.
You can do as amended.
As amended, yeah.
All right, Mr. McClung,
It's never even been read the first time. Why do you have to amend it?
now.
Well, I guess that's right. It hadn't been read yet.
Go home, Tim. No.
What was the original
Meyer
motion?
moved to assign a number, and Ms. Green seconded, and read it for passage. So we've already done that part.
Okay.
And then the amendment, which I'm happy to do. Can we,
Read yet.
don't remember doing that, but okay.
Okay, I think we need a motion to accept the amendment.
Okay?
Motion to accept the amendment.
All right, get a second.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, now I have the motion to read the resolution.
Thanks. Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
And the amended resolution number 784. A resolution authorizing the mayor of Eureka Springs to apply for a grant from the USDA Rural Development. Whereas the city council has determined that the city of Eureka Springs meets eligibility requirements necessary to apply for a grant under the USDA Rural Development Community Facilities Program. And whereas the city council recognizes the need for a new bucket truck, concurs with this project's importance, and supports the mayor of Eureka Springs in the effort to proceed with the same. Be it resolved by the city council of the city of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, that the mayor is hereby authorized to submit an application of formal request to the USDA Rural Development Community Facility Grant Program for purposes of securing grant funds in the maximum amount of $50,000 to aid and assist the city of Eureka Springs. This matching grant with the city of Eureka Springs, providing $57,019 for a purchase maximum total of $107,019.
Okay. Thank you. All right, now then, that brings us up to our second item of business, the ordinance for a bed and breakfast definition change. Mr. Meyer and Ms. Harmon.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
Okay, we have, I think in front of you, packets that had been submitted to us from the Planning Commission, and the chairman of, well, I don't think she's chairman now, but she was chairman at the time, is here for that, to discuss about the changes in the ordinance that they are recommending.
We've done that.
Huh?
We've done that. We're waiting for the ordinance.
And so, Mr. Weaver,
It's been postponed each,
did we get a,
Meeting.
did we approve this to send it to the city attorney?
yes?
Mr. Thomas is shaking his head no.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I thought we did.
We did
No, it was just said that we were,
months
Mr.
ago.
Weaver was going to write up an ordinance for us.
Well,
We,
yeah.
I don't remember discussing it, really.
We made the approval for what we wanted said that we were sending to
Right.
the city attorney.
The last step was to ask for an ordinance to be written, and it has been postponed several times. We are still waiting for the ordinance.
I concur.
All right, Ms. Harmon?
I just made a motion to discuss. Whether or not we have it here or not, the motion was to discuss. I just have a couple questions since it hasn't been written at this point. I made copies so everybody had something to review because it has been probably at least 3 or 4 months since we've received it, if not longer. So I had a couple questions after reading through this again, just trying to refresh myself as to what was originally requested. And I know Ann is here and Laura Jo's here too. So I have really a couple questions for both of you or one of you, whoever wants to come up to Mike. I'm not sure you both want to stand next to each other, but I do have a couple of concerns, and since it hasn't been written, I at least want to address them.
Question on this, since we already discussed and passed how it was going to be worded, is this allowable?
I'm sorry, do what?
Since this has already been discussed and the wording submitted to the city attorney, is this allowable?
Well, it's a motion to discuss, and that's what she's doing.
Right.
That's
So-
what I asked.
What, yes. What is your question?
Okay. Can I ask?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a couple things on here. We've got two changes that I really am looking for some answers. Changes to the second definition. So at the bottom of the first page, there is a phrase that is being removed, and it is the phrase "no longer than 30 days per guest" has been removed. And what that refers to is the term that a guest would be able to stay at a bed and breakfast lodging establishment. My question is, and I only ask this because it is a concern to me, in that if I allow someone to stay, I have a bed and breakfast, if I allow someone to stay over 30 days, they legally become a tenant. And when that happens, a whole new set of rules and laws apply to me as a business owner. If I wanted to, I've got 9 rooms. If I wanted to, I guess if there's no phrase in there saying they can't stay longer than 30 days, I could rent out monthly, or I could rent out by a 6-month term, or I could rent out by a year term. And then don't I become a multi-housing unit instead of a bed and breakfast?
You do, and honestly, I did not catch that it had been removed.
So
I don't,
that's,
I think it has to stay.
okay, and so that's my first concern, only because we haven't written anything yet.
Right.
So that's number one. And then number 2 is, there's a phrase in here on the second page, on the second paragraph, that is related to on-site. It says, "For the purpose of this section, on-site shall be defined as the parcel boundaries of the address approved in the application. Bed and breakfast lodgings in business before October 22nd, 2019 shall be considered legally non-conforming for the purposes of the on-site definition only." If I'm understanding legally non-conforming, that means, and Tim, I'll ask you to make sure I'm reading this correctly. I know it doesn't say grandfather, but does that mean that when someone applies for, so say for example, I sell my business and someone decides to buy it, do they not have to come before the Planning Commission, and I'm in residential, in R1 or R2, does that mean that they don't have to come before the Planning Commission anymore in order to get that CUP? Does it automatically pass?
Arguably, by the wording that is proposed here, if it is a bed and breakfast that is operating as a corporation, it would not have to come back before anybody.
And is that based on how I've been running it or how the new owner wants to run it?
That would be based on how it has been run at the time of the
Sale.
quote-unquote non-grandfathering, which is really basically grandfathering back to that date. So it
Okay.
would be how it's run as of the passage of the law, basically.
Okay, so right now, it is being, the business itself is in the name of a corporation, okay? And I'm saying that because that's my experience. I don't know how everybody else is set up, but in my instance, that's how I'm set up.
And if the business owns the property and sells the property, then it would continue on, because a business is considered a person in the state of Arkansas.
Okay, so my biggest concern is, if that is the scenario that, and again, I'm using myself as an example. I may be the only one that's doing it this way. If I were to sell my business and that individual that purchased it wants to continue to run it as a bed and breakfast, and they do not have to come before planning to get the CUP, being in a residential neighborhood, doesn't that take some of the rights away from those citizens in that neighborhood? What if I'm a horrible, horrible owner, and I let people drink and, squeal out of the driveway and make all kinds of noise? The purpose of having that CUP and having the Planning Commission monitor those and/or give them when somebody new purchases is so that it allows the neighborhood to come in and at least be able to voice their opinion as to whether or not they want it or they don't want it. And I'm not talking commercial here, I'm talking residential, because it is because I have one in residential. Doesn't that take away some of the rights of those neighbors to have this wording that way? It could potentially, is what you're basically saying.
It actually takes away part of the basis for the ordinance itself, because the ordinance itself is for the city to be able to periodically readdress the
Right.
changes as to whether a cup is still valid.
Right.
What happened 15 years ago in a neighborhood may not be what's going on in the neighborhood 15 years later.
But do you,
And if there was a sale under this wording, if there was no review, there would be no way the city could step in and say, at this point, this is not appropriate.
but you do agree that
It's taken away from the city's rights. So
take away
yes,
from the
technically.
city's rights, technically it takes away from the city, the residents' rights as well, because they
Yes.
would be the ones who would voice their concern if there was a real issue.
They would be the ones that would most likely bring that to the attention
Right.
of the city,
Okay.
yes.
So those are my concerns with what we have here. And again, I mean, if I could automatically get a grandfather, I don't know how many CUPs have been issued since October 22nd, 2019. I don't think there have been many.
There
That
haven't-
means
there ha-
everything.
There
in-
haven't, and I said at the last meeting when I proposed this, that those last two paragraphs were entered by Ms. Booth, and I don't agree with either one of them. I don't support the 180-day,
Can you speak up a little closer to the microphone, please, ma'am, or?
yeah. At the
Thank you.
last meeting, I mean, I've made it pretty clear that the 180-day rule waiver and the on-site was added by Glenna, and I don't support them. We've never had anybody, to my knowledge, if they've not been open for more than 180 days, the owner must apply to the Board of Zoning Adjustment for a waiver. I don't really know why that's there, and I don't support making everything legally non-conforming.
Because basically, that would make everything in R1 and R2 legally
Absolutely.
non-conforming, right?
And that way, if you have a CUP right now, that CUP goes away.
Right, okay. Well, that was my concern, because I know there are several that are in residential. And again, would it benefit me? Absolutely. But at the same time, I think I'm a good owner, and I just feel like, you know, if that right or that ability for the residents to weigh in on the next owner, or even if there's big issues to bring it before planning, it's kind of gone.
You know, this has been on the table since the very first meeting I ever attended at planning.
I know.
And all we're trying to do is, since we have two separate definitions that contradict one another, is to bring this together, that we have one thing that we can all live with.
Well, again, I know it hasn't been written, but I did want to at least address those two things, because as I was reading over it again, it started to
Do you want to say?
kind of bother me. And I'm not, you know, again, I think it's probably up to city council. Obviously, we have to pass these when they change.
Well, I appreciate the clarification before you do that. I mean, I was under the impression there was going to be discussion anyway about it.
Right, yeah, these were not authorized or voted on
Yeah.
by the, those last two definitions, the 180-day rule and on-site, were not brought up before the planning commission and not voted on by the planning commission.
So why were they brought to us? Why were they brought to us?
Because that was what was submitted when she wrote them
We
up.
gave it to Glenna to draft and send up to you all, and that was something inserted afterwards.
Okay, so, okay, go ahead,
Do
Bob.
we
I'm not gonna.
need to redo again?
Yeah, well, I just,
Moment.
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say that I think we're looking at something that wasn't approved by the commission, correct?
The only thing that was approved by the commission was the definition that would replace those two definitions.
But I mean, this document in its entirety has not been approved by the commission.
No, only pretty much the first page.
Then I would suggest that you guys go back and approve it and bring it
We
to,
have, and gave it to Glenna, and that was inserted after.
We don't want to, I don't think, yeah, I mean, we've had ad nauseum discussion over this.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I know you've discussed it, but discussing it doesn't mean you voted on it. And I think you should be bringing something to the council table that you have voted on, and you're telling me that parts of this document you have not voted on. So I'm suggesting you need to go back, and if you want to take the second page off, that's fine, take it off, and then vote to approve the first page and bring it to council.
Okay, we'll do that.
Don't forget that second definition at the bottom of the first page, though.
We'll bring it back to its original form that we have already voted on. We have that electronically, and we will restore that.
Ms. Schneider, clarify, please, what you just said?
Susan had brought up the phrase "no longer than 30 days"
Oh,
per
yes,
guest.
we'll definitely make sure that's included in it.
Ms. Green?
Yeah, I'm curious too, when did this get put in there that the application that the owner or resident manager will occupy the premises when the lodging is open for business? So that means they can live anywhere they want but just have to be there when somebody's there? I was always told that a bed and breakfast was a home-based business, that you lived there and offered your home for lodging. Was that something you guys?
The problem is, I mean, how do you put this in where we've got one that, yes, you have to live on site. They're certified that the owner resident shall occupy the premises. Then we have another one that you can live next door. And next door turned into across the street. It turned in down the street. It turned into I'm going to live at the lake and I'm going to rent it. So at what point do you, I'd be happy just to go to the one on page 417 that's already there and get rid of the one on page 451.
Well, that was the one when I owned a bed and breakfast many years ago. That was the one I lived by, and I felt it worked. In 2001, they abolished tourist lodging in R1 and left bed and breakfast for the reason of having someone in the home to manage guests. And I was always under the assumption that's why it was there, and that's why you were left to give CUPs for bed and breakfast only.
Well, then in 2012, it was changed.
Yeah, I think you should stay with page
Mr.
17,
Mayor?
417, please.
Just whenever you get a chance.
Mr. McClung?
Yeah, I mean, this issue has been rehashed and thrashed and trashed so many times over the last 4 or 5 years with no progress. You know, maybe we just need to leave the thing alone. You know, really, you think about what's there. If you read it, what's there and what's happened, you just leave it. It's really not that badly written because we haven't been able to agree on anything differently to make it any better as people think it needs to be better. So, you know what? Let's just forget it.
Ms. Schneider?
Well, the only reason they were doing this, though,
Speak in, please.
the only reason they were doing this, Terry, is because they had so many different changes and in different places that depending on which one you were reading, depended on which one you were applying. That's why they're trying to put them all together. I can remember when we went through several of these on planning, changes and everything else.
It's
So,
worked in the past.
before all those 5 million changes happened, that's the problem.
Ms. Green?
Sometime, and I think, Mickey, you were on the planning commission with me, Beverly Blankenship brought up wordage to put the shall not include properties separated by a city street, roadway, green space, or alley, meaning that if I owned a bed and breakfast in the house next door to me without any property separation, I could buy that house and live there. Now, that I don't think is a bad idea, and that part, I think, should be left in there, but I think the original one on 417, with the adding of they can live adjacent, it's very clear there, I think is a good ordinance. I think it should be left, and I think that's what you guys have been trying to do for the last year or so, and it just somebody keeps adding more to it every time.
Well, the problem is when you go to address code violations, and you've got somebody that lives next door, well, it's okay for the guy in the apartment to live next door. I think it's just like you said, it's just like Susan, she lives next door to her B&B.
Right.
If she owns the property, or whatever's approved. But the guy living at the apartment next door.
Right.
Or the guy living 2 houses down across the street, or the woman living across the street, I don't think that's the intent of a B&B.
Right,
And
I-
it's not fair to those that are doing the right thing.
I agree. I think it's been misused by, oh, I don't want to live here anymore, but my neighbor will be my manager. And I think that's what you have tried to do, because the original spirit of the law is that this is a home-based business with an owner or a manager that resides there. That's their legal address. They live there, they do their business there, they sleep. And I think that was the spirit of the law, and I think that's the spirit of the law you've been trying to project out here. You just want to clear up some verbiage in your book.
That's it.
Ms. Harmon?
I'm just going to, I know we've talked about all of these things, and I didn't mean to start a long conversation, but if you guys can just come back with what you think is appropriate. So I know it makes total sense for you to have things matched throughout code. That I understand. But if there are some things on here that shouldn't be on here, then can you just bring it back to us? Because Tim hasn't written anything yet. Once we receive it, then we can, or he can, go ahead and put that into place so it's correct throughout.
I'd be happy
So,
to.
We don't really need to do anything other than just ask them to take it back, right? And to bring it back to us in their
I think
completed form?
did we have a motion to defer it back to the planning commission?
We don't. I'll make a motion to defer it back to the planning commission.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that issue? All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I know it's frustrating, but
Thanks,
we'll
Ann.
get
Thanks,
it.
Lori.
All right, that brings us up to item number 4, sign ordinance regarding political signs. Get a motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
It's been brought to my attention this last week that we have in our sign ordinance a prohibition of political signs 30 days before election, and it's also was brought to my attention that this is really a violation of federal law, or what the federal court should say. I shouldn't say federal law, federal court has discussed, and especially since with this COVID virus and early voting and absentee voting is going out next week, I felt it was important to go ahead and get this taken care of by ordinance. And so that's what this is referring to. So-
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to sign this ordinance and number and read it for its first reading.
Second.
All right. Ms. Snyder?
Okay. I know there's only a few things that cities do not get superseded, and I thought a city had the individual right to make a decision in regards to cluttering up their city, shall we say. That's why we originally voted to not allow signs any longer than 30 days. We didn't want political signs cluttering up our city and making it look trashy. That was the #1 reason we did this years ago. In view of this year's situation, I can thoroughly understand doing a resolution to allow 60 days for the next year, and then we'll look into it again then. But since when does federal courts have the right to tell us what our town is going to look like?
For a long time.
Mr. Mayor?
I don't think they have that right.
The
If you don't
Supreme
want
Court,
signs, I
if
don't
this
see-
went to the Supreme Court, yeah, it's a free speech issue, and it's a little complicated, but if you have to read it to tell that it's no good, then it's
It's
a free
not
speech
a
issue.
free speech issue, Harry.
That's what the,
It
that's
is,
what the
it's
Supreme
First
Court said.
Amendment. Yeah.
Well, then Eureka's the one to take them to court and win, like we do against the state all
Well,
the time.
just because we did it didn't mean it was right.
We
Ms.
don't want
Green?
our city looking ugly and trashy, and they're saying tough.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but unfortunately, the
That's our
sign,
free speech.
the
Mickey,
sign
I-
lobbyists have won.
Mickey, I don't disagree with you. I don't want to see our town littered up with signs constantly. But it's correct. It is our constitutional right. What happens in Eureka Springs now with this ordinance Bobby Ray could decide to cite me, and I have to go to court. The city will lose in court, but I still am cited and I have to go to court. So it's kind of a moot point, but it's a punishment on citizens if one of our police officers said, well, I'm going to enforce this ordinance. So
What are you talking about? What?
because of our ordinance, Mickey,
Because of our standing ordinance?
our standing ordinance,
sorry.
if I put up a sign tomorrow, our police could decide to cite me. Now, I would win in court, but I still have to go to court because I was cited.
Yeah,
So
but your
it's
point,
kind of a moot point. Well, I don't want to go to court for something
Let's
I'm
not,
going to
we're
lose.
not arguing among ourselves, all right? Ms.
Okay.
Harmon?
I just,
Mr. Weaver, you want to explain the federal ruling?
Not to overburden you with 3 hours, which the,
talk to your mic.
all right, not to
Through-
overburden
through
you with the
the-
3 hours of the lecture that the municipal league gave us when this came down. But basically, there are 2 types of speech in this country. There's commercial speech and there's political or speech that has a meaning behind it other than to sell something. And the courts came down on the idea that we can put limitations on how things are sold, commercial speech, but we cannot necessarily infringe upon free speech of political ideas. And saying vote for John Smith is political speech, or saying vote against the use of firearms, that's political speech. And it's protected according to the Constitution by the right to openly express oneself. And the courts have ruled, starting with the Florida Court of Appeals or Florida district courts, and coming up from there, and now in several places in the country. And it has eventually worked its way up through the entire system, so that the Supreme Court is now saying we cannot put limitations on political speech. We can put limitations on commercial speech. So if they want to advertise their rummage sale for more than 3 days, our ordinance that says you get 3 days trumps that. But if they want to say vote for kangaroos to be elected mayor, sorry, Mayor, but
We already have one.
I'd vote for them.
Yeah,
they
I
have-
love Ruse.
They have the right to put that up and leave it up for more than 30 days.
Okay, can I continue on with him? We also have a city ordinance that specifies, like, businesses, they can't have neon outside their business. They can do it inside. I think it's 5 feet from a window, okay? And this is all legal. Of course, this is part of commercialism, because, anyway, so rather than just bending over to them because we still disagree, can we say, go ahead and post your signs whenever you want, but they must be inside a window?
We take the risk, if we were to continue with our ordinance as it is and then try to enforce our ordinance, that we would become in violation of 42 U.S.C. 1983, which says an officer or a political unit which tries to enforce a statute which they know has been ruled unconstitutional is in violation and can be held in violation by the court and fined significant amounts of money.
But we're allowing them to put their signs. We're just not allowing them out on the street, trashing our town. That we
I
can do
think
that?
it would be, I
We
think
can't
that-
limit it, is what you're saying.
I think most courts would find that that was a limiting, yes.
I think most courts would get it and snicker.
You know. Unfortunately, they didn't snicker when the original issue was issued in Florida. The town in Florida had similar beauty aspirations as you're expressing, and one particular corner was covered, and they showed pictures in our class at the municipal league literally dozens and dozens and dozens of political signs all grouped together on this corner. And it was a trashy mess. The election had been over for some time even. And they told them that those people were potentially running again.
So what you're saying is not only can we not prohibit how early they put them out, we can't make them take it down? I mean, they have, what, 3 days after an election to pick up all their signs. This is no longer viable either?
That's more so, but still, they could make the argument that potentially they're running again.
So what are we going to do? Somebody can have dumb signs up for a year after an election. Is this what you're saying?
That's what the interpretation that I received from the municipal league and from speaking with some constitutional lawyers otherwise that were present at their deal. Yes.
Okay, so after an election, let's say a week or a month after an election, if a local person wanted to drive around and pick up all the signs that are still out there making our town look ugly as sin, would they be in trouble
If
for
they're
private
taking
property theft?
if they're taking personal property from someone else's
Yeah,
property,
that's
they
what I
could be
figured.
charged with theft.
We've got to be able to do something. I don't know, this sucks.
All right, any further discussion?
May I add
Ms. Harmon?
something?
Based on who is running, at least this year, and I think years past, I think the individuals that are running for office are going to be responsible enough to pick up their signs, to be kind to the town, because they are representing the town. They are representing the citizens that live here. And
I
I can't
hope-
imagine that any person that would be running for an office would want to be blamed afterwards for making our town look trashy because they haven't picked something up for 6 months. So they're adults, they should be able to figure it out. And so I don't think that issue, I think that just went down a rabbit trail, so.
I hope you're
May
right,
I
I
add
really
something?
do.
Madam Clerk?
The way the code is actually written, the property owner who's given permission to have the signs is responsible for removing them, not the person who posted the sign. So if that gives you any assurance, the property owner is probably not going to want her lawn to look
Right.
like a trash heap.
I hope not.
Okay.
All right,
Do you
any
need
further
a-
discussion? We got a motion and a second to
Okay.
assign the number and read on first reading. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved.
The ordinance number will be 2299. Ordinance to remove prohibition on exhibiting political signs more than 30 days before election dates and declaring an emergency. Whereas the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, Municipal Code subsection 7.52.14 currently forbids the exhibiting of political and/or campaign signs for more than 30 days before an election, and whereas certain federal courts have found similar provisions in other municipalities unconstitutional. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, Section 1, all time and/or date restraints imposed by municipal code on the exhibiting of political signs are hereby removed. Section 2, all ordinances and resolutions and parts thereof in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. In the event any one or more of the provisions contained in this ordinance shall for any reason be held by a court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, illegal, or unenforceable in any respect, such invalidity, illegality, or unenforceability shall not affect the remaining provisions of this ordinance, and this ordinance shall be construed as if such invalid, illegal, or unenforceable provision or provisions had never been contained herein.
And get a motion
I'd
to,
like to make a motion that we approve this ordinance on its first reading.
Second.
okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
All right, so moved.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make, what's the ordinance number?
2299.
2299. I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rules and read ordinance number 2299 by title only for the
Second.
second reading.
Is that you?
Ms. Harmon, second.
Yes.
All right, any further discussion?
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
No.
Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
5-1. Ordinance number 2299, ordinance to remove prohibition on exhibiting political signs more than 30 days before election dates and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2299 on its second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would like to suspend the rules and read ordinance number 2299 by title only for its third reading.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded by Ms. Harmon. Any discussion?
Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
No.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
5-1. Ordinance number 2299, ordinance to remove prohibition on exhibiting political signs more than 30 days before election dates and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2299 on its third reading.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay,
Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Nope.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
5-1.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we invoke the emergency clause for this ordinance.
Second.
okay, motion been made and seconded to invoke the emergency clause. Any discussion?
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Nope.
Mr. McClung?
Yep.
Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
5-1. Emergency Clause, Section 3. The City Council, due to early voting about to begin for the November general election, and because of the higher-than-normal request for early voting, the City Council of Eureka Springs, Arkansas finds that because of the need to align with the federal court decision regarding political and/or campaign signs, it is in the best interest and for the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Eureka Springs to remove the prohibition against exhibiting political campaign signs more than 30 days prior to an election, that an emergency is hereby declared to exist, and therefore, this ordinance shall go into full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
All right, thank you. All right, I believe that concludes our normal meeting schedule on agenda. Brings us to agenda settings. Anyone? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I understand that the personnel policy handbook is going to be redone in January, but I would like to adding a nepotism clause into the current one at the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, that brings us council comments. Ms. Harmon?
None.
Mr. Meyer?
Earlier this year, I brought up the city code that required any new hire at the police department be confirmed by the council. I was told at that meeting that I was trying to micromanage the police department, and that the police chief and the mayor now had exclusive control over hiring. That part of the code was no longer valid. Well, after recent events, I hope the council sees why there is need for this type of oversight. We, the council, should assume the responsibilities that the people elected us for. Our duty is to pass ordinance, so let's form a committee to create an ordinance. It's time to reinstate a hiring policy that addresses nepotism, one that requires a thorough background check of new officers, a policy, and I can't believe I have to say this, that denies employment to anyone who's under investigation for a crime or has been convicted of a crime. And lastly, the hiring policy, I believe, should be in a separate ordinance from the employee handbook.
Ms. Snyder?
Terry's next.
Oh, Mr. McClung?
I'll pass.
Ms. Snyder?
Okay, I still think maybe I'm too much of a long timer. We have fought the state too many times on too many dumb issues and won, and I still think we should fight this one. I don't think any outsider, I don't care what level they're at, no outsider has the right to tell our town how it's going to look. If we want signs, fine. If we don't, fine. If we want a pretty city, that means not a ton of signs. That's why we did that in the first place. I don't think any outsider has the right. I don't think freedom of speech has a damn thing to do about it. Not in this case, because we're talking strictly election signs. That's all we're talking about. Has nothing to do with it, and I think we should stand up like we used to do and go ahead and fight them. And just as a side, I'd like to remind Mr. Meyer, because he has a personal problem with the police department, that doesn't mean we should be coming down on them. People are human. We don't know squat about police enforcement needs, backgrounds, or anything else. We do not need to be getting our fingers in every pie. That's it.
Ms. Green?
I'm going to apologize because I am going to be a little long-winded tonight because this is something that's very dear to me. This November, our ballot will be an initiative to dissolve the Historic District Commission. If this happens, we will lose millions in grant. We will lose our certified local government standing. Also, again, millions in grants gone. It is true our city will remain a historic district, but with no one to govern it. The Preservation Department in Little Rock will oversee applications. Can you imagine the wait or being able to hire a contractor to do a job while you wait to be approved? Go talk to the leaders in Bentonville as they anguish over how to save what little is left of their historic properties. They didn't have a historic district or a commission to stop the demolitions and the new fancy condos that were built. Imagine in a couple of years when we start to look like Branson, complete with the King Kong hanging off the Flatiron Building. Think about the McMansions dotting our historic loop, the chain eateries and stores allowed to flourish. If you want all this, vote to abolish the HDC. The HDC is comprised of volunteers who have extensively trained and educated by the federal government. In the 14 years I served on the HDC, I had hundreds of hours of conferences, training, and seminars all over the country, and many in our own town. Did I make mistakes? Yes. Did I learn from those mistakes? I hope I did. The many members I served with over the years were thoughtful, ethical, and believed in their city. When you think the HDC is contentious, arbitrary, remember, they oversee over 500 applications a year. They turn down less than 10, and of those 10, they work to come up with solutions. In fact, in the last 3 years, they have only turned down 6 applications. Does that sound arbitrary? Does that sound overbearing? This petition was started by a man who was dissatisfied by the ruling of the HDC. The ruling was to keep his house a contributing historical property. He was turned down twice. It was explained twice to him the reasons in a respectful and professional way why he was being denied. His contractor stood at the microphone and said he could do the work at midnight and we would never know. The applicant wagged his finger at us, telling us how disappointed he was in us. We were just doing our job. He sued us, lost twice in court. Our prosecuting attorney called him selfish to all the people who had followed our rulings, who wanted to be part and preserve our historic district. The judge agreed. The petition was started by this man whose legal address was Dallas, Texas. Only when he decided, since he lost in court, did he finally register in July of 2020 that he lived in Eureka Springs. That way he could start a petition to destroy our historic district. He has been asked to be a part of the solution, but he doesn't want that. In my opinion, he wants to ruin our town. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Nothing from me, thank you.
I want to take a moment to follow up similar to what Ms. Green was talking about, and to address a letter that was in the letter to the editor that appeared in last week's Independent regarding the Historic District Commission. The author of the letter questioned two things which the HDC has brought to bear in the past 42 years of existence: grants generated and tax credits. And here's just a few of the facts about these topics. Since 1978, the HDC has helped generate $2.5 million in grants and tax credits, $2,531,000 in grants and tax credits. The city and local nonprofit organizations have been the recipient of these historic preservation grant dollars, not private homeowners. There have been many local homeowners who have taken the time to apply for and receive tax credits from the preservation work they've completed on their property. The Arkansas and federal tax credits total $934,818, almost $1 million. Taking the tax credit information one more step, the related construction cost of these projects that received the tax credits is $4,447,000. That represents the local jobs for local crafts and professional people. Catherine Barrier, the Arkansas Certified Local Government Coordinator, sums up the value of HDC far better than I. She states, "Our experience in Arkansas has shown historic district commissions are a powerful tool for preservation of historic fabrics and economic prosperity. Studies have also shown heritage tourists, which form a large portion of Eureka Springs' livelihood, regularly spend more, stay longer than any other visitors. The unique historic characters of Eureka Springs is a linchpin of our heritage tourism industry. So please be informed before you vote, not with other opinions, but with the facts." Thank you. Get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All right.
So moved. Thank you all very much.